But on the first day of the week at early dawn, they came to the tomb, taking the spices that they had prepared.
You all ever heard somebody say that they're supposed to worship on Sundays? You ever ran into people, they say Saturday, Sabbath is the day. And it's almost silly to have that debate because it's like they believe that you can follow God and you can give to the poor and you can work for justice. But then God's going to say, you did all that, but you worshiped me on the wrong day. I mean, isn't that kind of silly? It's a little silly the more I think about it. But why do we worship on Sundays? I mean, what's so special about Sunday that we gather in the name of the Lord? Well, there are a few things. We know that Paul wrote to the Romans in chapter 14, verse 5. He talked about this because obviously this was a debate even in the first century. What day should you worship? And if you read Romans 5, verse 14, chapter 14, verse 5, Paul says, whatever day works for you, basically, I'm summarizing it. If it's made up in your mind, that's the day that you ought to worship. But then if you just turn a few pages and you go to 1 Corinthians chapter 16 and you read the first 3 verses, you'll see right there, and even in biblical times, they started worshiping on Sunday. Paul says that they collected money for ministry right there. And what day did they do it? They did it on a Sunday, early Sunday morning. So by the end of the first century, it was common practice for Christians to gather on a Sunday morning. But here's how it all started. Over 2,000 years ago, Jesus of Nazareth was killed unjustly, put in a borrowed tomb, and then it was Sunday morning. Of all the days, it was on the first day of the week that Jesus walked out of the grave. And what that symbolizes, that Sunday over 2,000 years ago, what that means is that on Sunday, God says, I'm breaking and I'm giving new life. But you know, that's not the only reason why we worship on Sunday. If you go even to the book of Genesis, during the creation story, God began creation on what day? On the first day of the week. And you know what God brought forth on the first day of the week? The Bible says God separated darkness from light. So it was on the first day of the week, according to the book of Genesis, that God brought light into the world. Light represents understanding. Light represents wisdom and knowledge. Light represents hope. Light represents goodness. Light represents righteousness. So Jesus rose on the first day of the week. God began creation on the first day of the week. But you know what else? If you turn to the book of Revelation, chapter 1, verse 10. And the book of Revelation was written by the Apostle John while he was stranded on an island called Patmos. And it's in Revelation chapter 1, verse 10, that John says, on the Lord's day, I heard a loud thundering voice. It was on the Lord's day that John heard God's voice. So why do we worship on Sunday? Because Sunday was the day God brought understanding to the world. It was on Sunday that God said new life is possible. And it was on Sunday that they heard the voice of the Lord. And that is why we gather on Sunday morning.